always take that pause because it always takes a second for the video to really, for us to know that it's going anyway. Here we are in the Osterman apartment. Alex McCarthy, I'm Zach Osterman, and we are exhausted, and we aren't even in East Lansing, much less did we play the game tonight. That was, you know, we said it, I think, in our pregame video, when was that, a lifetime ago, yesterday, that, you know, we had no idea how this game was going to go, just that it was going to be, it just felt like it wasn't going to let anyone down. It was going to be an instant classic, and
we were right.
Lord, was it? I mean, it was just, it was great individual performances, big individual moments, big collective moments. I mean, it was maybe the game of the year in a year full of them. And certainly, you know, maybe Indiana's biggest conference win. I don't know. I mean, they haven't won a Big Ten title since, 2002, I believe, maybe 2003. I think it was 2002. But, you know, I mean, it's their biggest conference win. I'm not even sure how long. It certainly at least the last decade, if not longer.
Yeah. I mean, Ed Magoni put that on our live thread after the game ended, that this was, you know, Crean's biggest conference win.
Oh, no doubt.
And it was just kind of like,
doubt.
It seems like, and you know, you said one of the games of the year, and it just seems like we keep saying these over and over again this year. You know, this is a marquee, you know, Crean era win. This is a huge, you know, that might have been the best game of the year and the best conference. I mean, it seems like Indiana keeps playing these games, and guys like Victor Oladipo and Christian Watford keep showing up. I mean, you mentioned individual plays, individual moments, performances. I mean, the last 2 minutes of the game between Watford and Oladipo, of huge plays. We saw Oladipo getting rebounds and getting that last dunk, and I think he scored the last 6 points of the game. And then there's that Watford play with a minute and a half where he
were down 4 and he had that 3-point play.
And he drives on Payne, and just
how did he get that up? How did it go in?
And you saw after the play. I mean, Watford is the most laid back. You know, I mean, he gets a lot of crap for that. You know,
Indiana. He used to, maybe not anymore.
Right. And you saw him just, you know, fist pump and really into that play. And that was
he had a
such
pretty
great
frustrating day too, certainly, with the flagrant foul, which, you know, I mean, you can say what you want. It's a bad rule. It needs to be reviewed, but that was the rule. It probably was the right call based on the replays. Yeah. You know, and we won't talk about the Derek Nix, Cody Zeller incident,
or a number of the calls.
Yeah, you know,
both sides.
An old friend from college named Matt Dollinger, who now works at Sports Illustrated, apparently is trending in Indianapolis, or was at some point tonight, because he sent out a tweet saying that Indiana defeated Ted Valentine tonight. It was not a poorly officiated. It was not a well officiated game. Let's say that on either side. Let's be clear. Yeah. Both sides are going to have some gripes. Both sides are going to have some complaints. That Payne foul on the Watford drive, 50-50.
Yeah, and then there was a Zeller continuation that was not.
And then
whatever.
You know, and then the Will Sheehy foul on the Gary Harris 3. You know, well, one way or the other. What matters is, that was just an epic game of basketball. It was guys making plays. And to say what you want about Knicks with the Zeller play, you can't go inside someone's head and decide whether or not he meant to do that. It was intentional. But, you know, he had a couple huge buckets at the end of the game. But this, to me, you know, obviously we can talk about the play of Oladipo, and we will in a second. But really, like, what jumps out to me is Indiana's down, 4 points late in a raucous environment. No one would have fallen this year, really, probably at any point in Tom Crean's tenure, really ever. I mean, you know, Michigan State is the number 4 team in the country. They're incredibly talented. And despite another really, really subpar game from Keith Appling, who I think it's now like 2 of 12 with 8 turnovers in 2 games against Indiana this year. I mean, just has not had a good go of it against Indiana. But, you know, to respond there, to make those plays, to you know, whether he was fouled or not, the Watford shot was off balance.
Yeah.
He was moving. He was falling to his right. It was not an easy shot, and he dropped it right in. And then he made the free throw. Oladipo, he gets the dunk when Michigan State's trying to prevent Jordan Hulls basically from getting the ball to shoot free throws. Yeah. You know, Tom Izzo said after the game that a screen was missed there. Certainly, I think Tom Crean could probably relate to him in that regard. But, you know, to get that dunk, to get the rebound off of what was an intentionally missed free throw by Gary Harris, and then to make both of those free throws to to seal the game in the end, with I think like 2.5 seconds left. I mean, this was just, you just keep coming back to it. This game just it just didn't disappoint. I mean, it was everything we thought it would be.
No, I mean, in the last 5 or 6 minutes, it felt like the game was hanging on every possession, and that's exactly what you want. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, as we said, there are a lot of weird things that happened that kind of broke up what was just such a great game between the officiating and the back-to-back clock mistakes. I mean,
and all of the lengthy, and I know that Dan Dockett just probably led the charge about the looking at the monitor, and a lot of people complain about how it just kind of kills the rhythm and the feel of college basketball. There was so much of that.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that there were so many opportunities where the game could have just really lost a lot of its fervor and a lot of its kind of excitement, and then it just kept supplying it. It just kept not letting us down, and it was exactly what we wanted to see and exactly what we expected to see. And
we obviously being college,
everyone who
we do not cheer for Indiana.
No, everyone who watches basketball
right.
wanted to see this game be a 2, 3, 4 point game.
Chipper Jones tweeted about Victor Oladipo. Yeah. I mean, that is the relevance of Indiana, of Victor Oladipo, and just of Big Ten basketball this year.
Yeah.
I mean, Chipper Jones is a sports fan. He's a big Florida fan. They're playing right now. I know he watches college basketball based on some of his other tweets. But I mean, to be tweeting about that, when you're getting a mention from someone that kind of random obscure, and tangential to the game itself and to Big Ten basketball itself.
Yeah, and it was such a foil to last week's game at the Breslin Center between Michigan and Michigan State, where I think we wanted the same thing. We wanted it to be a 2-3 point game.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to come down to, a Trey Burke, a Keith Appling, something like that. And then it obviously was a dud, really. And this was kind of a refreshing, yes, that's what you want out of Big Ten basketball at the end of February.
And here's the question, we thought going into this game, these are the two best teams in the Big Ten. There's 4 games left. Obviously, you got to win the games. Nobody's handing out trophies tonight. But does this game in your mind, put Indiana? I mean, is Indiana the best team in the Big Ten now, barring injuries moving forward?
I mean, they've shown in spurts that they're not only the best team in the Big Ten, but they have the potential to be the best team in the country and to be that team that kind of separates itself. But then you have moments like the end of the Illinois game or a lot of the Wisconsin game where they kind of take steps back. But with everyone healthy, with everyone kind of clicking at their, with Yogi Ferrell, I mean, he had a great night that didn't really, I mean, he put up some good numbers, but really just watching him, he looked fantastic tonight. He
outplayed Keith Appling, and he did it quietly, like you said. But you're talking about a junior who has floor generaled a Big Ten championship team.
Yeah.
Michigan State won a share of the conference title last year, and then they, correct me if I'm wrong, they went on to win the NCAA title, or not the NCAA, the Big Ten tournament last year.
Yeah. To get a number one seed,
and twice now this year we've seen Ferrell outplay him, and we've seen, and it's not all Ferrell, but at this point he should get some credit for. I mean, he has been a primary defender of Keith Appling in these games. And Appling's 2 of 12. He's been a total non-factor, and when he has been a factor, it has been to the detriment of his team. And I'm not saying that Appling's a bad player. I'm just saying I think it's time to give Oladipo maybe some credit as well for the way he's played in these last 2 games, Ferrell against Michigan State. But forgive me for the Freudian slip. There really is only one player to talk about tonight above all others, and Tom Crean said that. I think his quote was that Oladipo was nowhere close or not even close to 100%, had us fooled. 7 of 11 from the floor, 19 points, 1 of 3 from behind the arc, I think 4 of 4 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 5 steals. And he doesn't put up the points of a Trey Burke or maybe a Doug McDermott. But
he takes away a hell of a lot of points.
He also gets free points. I mean, there's something to that. We look at things like points per possession now. When you get a steal and a dunk, it's almost not a possession. I mean, it goes down as one, obviously, but you don't have to use You don't have to run a play. You don't have to use shot clock. I mean, it's basically like you're just stealing 2 points. I mean, no pun intended.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically like you are just scoring without actually having a possession. Having to go through a possession, and that's part of his impact. It's like, I mean, it's almost it's almost a 4-point swing in a way, because you take away an opponent's possession and turn it into 2 points without any work done, essentially. And it's easy on a night like this to look at it and say that Victor Oladipo should get Big Ten Player of the Year over Trey Burke. But, I think it is fair to say, when you look at Indiana's rise, I think it's 9 wins and 10 now. I believe that's right.
Yeah.
Something like, because they were 3-0 going into the Wisconsin game, and they lost. They were 3-1. Now they're 9. Now they're 12-2. So yeah, 9 of their last 10. And really, let's be honest. I mean, they lost to Illinois. They lost because of 5.5 minutes of bad basketball. They played pretty well in that game against a team that we now know started to figure things out that day, based on the way Illinois has played since then. I mean, it actually turns out that Illinois actually was a pretty good team.
Yeah, they're a weird.
That was the beginning of kind of their mid-season renaissance. And it wasn't just because they beat Indiana; it was the way they played in that game that has carried forward since then. And I'm not excusing it. I'm not. A loss is a loss. You can't go back and fix it. You don't get to just cut it in half later on and mitigate it somehow. But it's 9 of 10, and really the 10th loss was a pretty good game that Indiana just kind of let go sour with some lost focus in the last 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that has all coincided with Victor Oladipo just playing like an irrepressible talent. Somebody tweeted tonight, because I think Dick Vitale was making some kind of either Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan comparison. Somebody said he's not Michael Jordan, but there are times where he does Jordan-esque things. He has a knack for making plays in big moments. He has a knack for knocking down big shots. That little up and under move he has around the rim. I mean, he's almost unstoppable when he can get within one step of the rim. I mean, you're either going to have to foul him, or you're going to have to let him score, or maybe both will happen. He can dunk. I mean, he's just become kind of an indefensible player in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone from, everyone talks about how much he's improved, from his freshman year to sophomore year, and then his sophomore year to his junior year. And it's just, I mean, he just keeps, we look at him and we look at guys like Adrian Payne, who just evolved from guys who are just athletic.
That 3-point shot is just remarkable.
Yeah.
Good on you, kid. And that should be talked about. It's like he has to be cheating, right? I mean, he has to have like a little magic, like a decoder ring that is guiding the. It looks so smooth.
It
looks
unreal.
Like
looking at the guy he was last year, or even at times this year.
It looks like he's been
hitting
threes for 10 years. It looks. I mean, the way the shots leave his hand, the arc, the way they go down. It doesn't. And it's a lot. We can say the same thing about Oladipo again.
Yeah,
I mean, he's shooting the. I don't know.
Yeah, where last year when you saw him kind of pull up from three, you were like, oh, geez, let's try. Let's see if they can get the offensive rebound off the miss. But this year, when you see Oladipo take his threes, usually there's no one within like 5 feet of him. He's very selective this year, and he's able to make a lot of those shots.
His mechanics have improved a lot. Just the subtle things, foot placement, follow through, hand placement on the ball.
Yeah, and he's a heck of a lot more confident this year. I mean, last year, last year he said that he at times he was just kind of he didn't have quite as much confidence in himself, and he kind of really faded shooting wise down the stretch. And this year, obviously an off season of working on the shot and trying to refine all of the little things, like footwork, like you said, and hitting more. And this year we've seen a lot of like 5 for 7 performances, or 6 for 9, or things like
7
that.
7 of 11 tonight.
Yeah. I mean, times where he shoots
supposedly on a bad ankle.
Yeah, where he shoots incredibly high percentages, and he plays so smart in terms of shooting the ball. And then you were drawing the comparison a little bit. Well, not the comparison, but just looking at him compared to Trey Burke, and we see him. He scores 25, 27. You see him put up those numbers all the time, but they're always on 11 for 24 shooting or something like that.
He's not a terribly efficient offensive player.
Right.
the 3-point shooting makes him more efficient.
Yeah,
but
but I mean, it's just kind of weird from a point guard to take that many shots, and he's a very score first point guard. And we saw that even at Michigan State, where when things were going bad, he started taking more and more shots instead of trying to work the offense and get into that rhythm where they're. I mean, you have Tim Hardaway and you have all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Burke, I mean, we shouldn't characterize him as a selfish player. That is kind of part. I mean, that is kind of his role. The offense works well when he's scoring. I mean, he's a point guard, but at times he's almost a scorer first. That's almost what Michigan wants and needs him to be. But and I'm not going to take sides on this whole debate that Tom Crean sort of backhandedly raised yesterday about Conference Player of the Week honors and how much winning factors into it. But the reality is Trey Burke has a ton of talent around him. And his team is 2 games back. Well, I guess probably, 2.5 games back now in the Big Ten standings. Victor Oladipo has keyed. I mean, Indiana, coming into the season, there were questions about it. I mean, they were the preseason number 1, but even then the narrative was like, well, nobody is a dominant team. We're putting Indiana there because we think they've got the most potential and this and that. But there's still things to prove. Indiana's still got some things to prove. Everybody's got some things to prove. Oladipo has been a huge part of Indiana proving those things. And now Indiana's 24-3. Here's the things they've done. They won in East Lansing for the first time since 1991. For historical reference, Derek Elston, Maurice Creek, and...
Swaffer the third one, or is Halls?
No. I'm missing somebody. Derek Elston, Maurice Creek, and I think someone else are the only players who are alive. Maybe it is just those two. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe it is just those two. Who are the only the only current players who were alive the last time Indiana. Tom Crean was not married the last time Indiana won in East Lansing. I mean, just for historical record, they have beaten 2 top 10 teams on the road. They have beaten 3 top 10 teams now, right? Or was Michigan 4 top 10 teams?
Yeah,
and 5 top 15 teams this season. None of their losses has come by more than 5 points. In fact, their 3 losses have come by combined a total of 9 combined points. And they've matched their regular season total in wins from a year ago, and they've surpassed their Big Ten total in wins from a year ago. And that's with 4 games left. So, I mean, there is something to be said for being the best player on the best team in the country, and for being a player who so obviously impacts that winning the way Oladipo does. I mean, it's not like he's scoring 25 points a game.
He's so visible in the last few minutes.
Yeah, he rebounds the ball. He gets these steals. I mean, that play he made when he poked the ball away, I think it might have been from Denzel Valentine, chased it out of bounds, flung it back into Yogi Ferrell, then immediately raced up the floor, got an outlet pass and dunked it. I mean, that's an MVP play. That's a play. It's not going to be a highlight reel like SportsCenter top 10 play. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't think it will. But that's just. I mean, that is something that winners do. And I know I sound like probably a lot like Tom Crean in saying that, but like plays like that are just. Those are very things that level. Are those. Yes, it's the bottom line, no question. No, I mean it. Those are plays that you're either wired to make or you're not. A lot of guys poke that away, try to chase it out of bounds, give up on it because they realize they're not going to get it, or they're not athletic enough to get there, have to turn off down the floor. I mean, you're either good enough, you're either just kind of good enough in a certain almost intrinsic way to make that play, or you're not. And I think that's what separates Oladipo. But one way or the other, he is now firmly in the Big Ten and National Player of the Year race, and Indiana's now in control of the Big Ten. They have a week off, which really comes at a pretty opportune time for Indiana.
And for Oladipo.
Yeah,
especially if he's not at 100% like Green.
Catch your breath. They got to go to the Barn next Tuesday. That is not an easy game. Minnesota's probably going to really, really want that win to sort of shore up their NCAA tournament resume, and then they'll have Iowa and Ohio State at home. If they win their next 3, they win the Big Ten. I mean, and I guess they could technically still tie Michigan State, but you'd probably, quite frankly, say that if those 2 tie for the Big Ten regular season title, I mean, they both get it, but I think Indiana would they'd have the number 1 seed in Chicago, and they'd probably have every right to feel like they were Big Ten champions after beating Michigan State twice. And perhaps most importantly, this game goes a really, really, really long way toward locking up the berth in Indianapolis, which is what Indiana's going to want so bad. That if they can get through that first weekend, almost assuredly now in Lexington or Dayton, Lexington, Kentucky, or Dayton, Ohio, because I'm sure there's probably a Dayton, Kentucky, and I know there's a Lexington, Ohio. That'd be an interesting first round trip. They're going to want Lucas Oil Stadium. I always call it Field. I don't know why, but they're going to want Lucas Oil Stadium so bad, and this goes a long way toward getting it. We're in over 20 minutes, and I still have writing to do. I don't know about this slacker here.
Hey, I'll write things.
Yeah.
I think so, right?
Maybe for us, maybe for someone else. We don't know.
Oh.
Maybe he'll write it in his
for both.
head. Maybe for everyone. He'll write for you. But we're going to shut it down for the night. For Alex McCarthy, I'm Zach Osborne. You've been watching Inside Indiana Overtime. We won't see you again for a little while, so you stay classy and enjoy the next 7 days.